do you think that weight gain is inevitable?
Very good question. And no, absolutely not.
What about weight? I think it is the most Googled search term relating to menopause more than anything else. Is weight gain in menopause.
Yeah, because it can be so frustrating. I totally can understand that. And we know, again, estrogen, really important in our metabolism, but also our weight distribution, so kind of where we put the weight. So obviously estrogen is reducing, and therefore, like males, we start to more centrally gain it. And women aren't necessarily used to gaining weight in different parts of their body, usually like the hips and the thighs, which are somewhat celebrated. Yeah. All of a sudden, we're getting it here, and we're like, what's going on? So again, thanks to the lovely changes in hormones, but also I think, annoyingly, menopause happens at the same time where we start to, obviously aging, we reduce our muscle mass, that slows down our metabolism and things like that. So it can be much trickier to maintain a healthy weight. But I think one of the important things is for people to feel empowered by the science and being like, well, actually, yes, it can be harder, but there are things I can do. Same with the gut symptoms, right? You don't need to just be like, I'm just going to hide myself away for 5 years because it's just a really tricky time. It is a tricky time, but let's empower ourselves with the science and go, okay, well, what things can we actually do?
So that was going to be my next question. So what should we be doing for all of this? Like weights, symptoms, Yeah, right. Well, okay, I guess it's... Sorry.
So in terms of the weight management, let's kind of look at that first. So we know that actually having more plants is a really important thing for weight management. And one of the mechanisms for that is that fiber. So I think everyone hears us saying we need more fiber, blah, blah, blah. So the thing about fiber is that human cells can't digest it. Like we don't have the enzymes. So actually when we eat fiber from all the plants, it travels through our 9-meter digestive tract, mostly undigested, reaches the final kind of 1.5 meters where we have most of those trillions of bacteria, scientifically termed our gut microbiota. So it's those microbes that have the enzymes. They break down that fiber, and that gives us feelings of, satiety. In fact, our microbes and the production of the breakdown of the fiber actually has been associated with increasing like GLP-1 hormone, which is obviously the target hormone for weight loss drugs like Ozempic and stuff like that. So we know our microbes are really important in things like satiety and feeling satisfied and even potentially cravings. So having more plants, whole plants, actually can be really helpful for weight management from that perspective. And then also thinking about protein, right? So we do know that we need a little bit more protein as we age. Now, I'm not saying we need to go and have all these protein shakes. You can, a lot of people go, oh, I have to have the protein bars and all this sort of stuff. And actually, probably recommend getting it from whole foods, particularly if weight focus. So, things like a cup of or half a cup of soybeans, which again, we know are important for, other symptoms of menopause, contains like 10 grams of protein, right? So it's so easy from plant sources even to get the protein.
I think that's a really tricky one, isn't it? We were talking about this earlier. We know that we need to eat more protein, but we also know that we need to eat less meat. And so how can you kind of easily get that protein into you without, meat's expensive as well as being not so great for the planet. So things like soybeans are a really good option. Anything else that's plant-based that's really high in protein?
Yeah, I would say all of your legume family. So things like your chickpeas, your butter beans, lentils, they're all a really good source. And I definitely recommend trying to get as many of them into your diet as possible. Now, I will say, if you're struggling with bloating, don't go gung-ho with these foods. And I think that's something that a lot of people, they're feeling really desperate. So then they'll hear this and like, oh my God, I'm just going to eat loads of plants. But actually the thing about plants is, again, full of that fiber, nourish the microbiome. But if you've gone from quite a low fiber diet to a really high one, your microbes kind of binge eat and they produce extra gas. And if you've got that underlying sensitive stomach because of all these changes in hormones, that can worsen bloating. So you need to think of it kind of like training your muscles at the gym. You don't go and, lift a PB from day dot, right? You build your way up. And the same with fiber. So if you find that legume family is something that creates a little bit of extra gas, well, I would say firstly, triple rinse your tins out of the beans, because that reduces down some of the gas, promoting.
I did not know that.
Yeah, triple rinse them. But then the other thing.
So what, you run them
in a cylinder?
Yeah.
Just put them under, rinse them once, rinse them twice, rinse them 3 times. Just to get rid of all the kind of that slimy bits.
Yeah.
So in terms of teaching your gut, so if you're really sensitive, I would just start with 1 tablespoon, but I would have it literally at lunch and dinner every single day. So open up a tin and keep it in the fridge. And so just literally it's like training your gut every day. And what happens is your gut microbes actually start to more efficiently digest that gas, and therefore you don't get those, burdensome symptoms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The other thing I think is thinking about fermented dairy. So things like kefir, actually a really good source of protein.
So what's kefir?
Kefir is similar to yogurt, right? It's like a cousin to a yogurt. It's just got more different types of microbes in it. So you can even make kefir at home, really easy. So you get the milk, add to the microbes, like these little cauliflower things, you buy them online. And what happens is those microbes start to break down the lactose, the milk sugar. And again, we talk about intolerances. So typically kefir has less lactose, about 30% less lactose than if you're just having cow's milk, because the microbes break down some of that lactose. They produce organic acids, which is why you get a little bit of a tart taste, and they've been associated with potential health benefits. But also what happens is those microbes can turn some of the proteins into bioactives, and some of them have been associated with heart health benefits as well. So fermented dairy is a great one for the protein, as well as all the kind of fermentation benefits.
Right. And how often should we be eating kefir?
Yeah, well, I mean, mix it up when it comes to fermented foods. So I would, say at least once a day having either kefir, yogurt, cottage cheese, kimchi, sauerkraut, fermented vegetables. In fact, there was one study from Stanford University. It wasn't particularly looking at those in the menopause, but it showed that those who had a high fermented food diet not only had more diverse range of gut bacteria, which actually in menopause we see a decline in diversity, right? So actually that's a benefit. But also there was a reduction in some of the markers of inflammation in their blood. And again, helpful if we're feeling more inflamed during the menopause. So yeah, adding fermented foods to your diet is another good one.
So I think one of the things that we really notice is that they say, I haven't made any changes. I'm still eating the same thing. I'm still exercising the same. My lifestyle's still the same. I'm not particularly stressed, but I cannot lose this weight. How do you tend to advise those women who without really restricting and being hungry, is there any way that you kind of talk to them about how they might?
Well, I do explain the fact that, yes, weight management is harder. So I think acknowledging that you probably can't eat the volume of higher calorie, lower nutrient dense foods that you used to, because the hormones change and therefore your metabolism changes, your muscle mass changes and stuff like that. So I would really look at their diet and look at how can we give them that satiety effect, give them that I feel satisfied, but with less of the calorie dense, nutrient poor food. So things like, if they're having bolognese for dinner, right, cut out half the mince for a can of mixed beans, right? Going to get loads of that fiber in there, as well as it being lower calorie, and often more nutrient dense with, those extra plants in there. So thinking about, hacks like that, as well as, again, spacing the protein out, because what we see is when you have, protein in your diet, a different meal, instead of having just one big meal of protein, actually breaking it up, because consuming protein does stimulate muscle building. So actually, instead of having just, a big chicken breast at evening, try have a little bit more protein at your breakfast and your lunch and your dinner, kind of spread it across, can be another really helpful thing. And then obviously exercise is an important one. If we're losing muscle, we need to make sure we're still doing some resistance training, and therefore we can kind of, reduce that degradation of our muscle mass.
So do you think that weight gain is inevitable?
Very good question. And no, absolutely not. Yeah. But I mean, it's important, so important that we accept it is tricky to maintain the weight. Right?
And it's kind of normal, right? It's normal.
Yeah, it's very normal. But I think it's understanding that it's normal, but empowering ourselves with the science. And if this is something that's important to us, is not to gain weight, then knowing that actually there are things that you can do.
We're quite narrow in what we eat from a kind of week by week basis, aren't we? You kind of easily get into habits of only doing kind of what's comfortable and familiar, rather than like we've got, you've seen,
I did give you a little bit of a snoop.
We've got like a cupboard full of every type of bean under the sun. Yeah. We've got spelt, we've got barley, we've got I can't even remember the names, but loads of things on the shelf. I don't even know what to do with them. I've seen them in a recipe somewhere, and I thought that looks great. I've seen that. Yeah, that looks great, but I can't follow a recipe, so I've struggled to actually put them inside. But they've got to be something, haven't they? And that's what we're supposed to be eating. Those kinds of.
I know, and I think one of the hacks is whenever you're at the supermarket, think diversity. So instead of buying like a different pack of each of them, get the pack that's got the 4 different types of beans, or, and you can get the cans. Don't be, don't need to be snobby and spend a day soaking them and all that sort of stuff. Get the pre-mixed grains and things like that, just to make it more efficient instead of being overwhelming. Like you're saying, go, oh my God, how do I cook this? It's going to take an extra 20 minutes. I don't have that. The kids are running around and all that sort of thing. And I think in terms of diet also, it's not just about, the general gut health, but we know that actually there has been not enough, but more research highlighting that actually it can help with reducing, some of the symptoms like hot flushes and night sweats and stuff like that by eating more plants, as well as things like those soybeans, because they contain those phytoestrogens as well. So again, thinking about food as, yes, we want it to be delicious and enjoyable, but actually making a few little tweaks to your diet might help with some of the symptoms that you feel you're so stuck with.
I would really love your opinion on things like Ozempic and GLP. What's your how does it have a role?
Yeah, it's a really good one, and I think it can potentially have a role. I'm definitely not anti it. I know that it can really help a lot of people, specifically who've struggled for a long time, right? And it's given them the motivation. They've seen a bit of reduction, and then they're like, I can do this. And, then they're more comfortable to go to the gym. They're more motivated to make some dietary changes. So I've seen it work well, but then I've also seen it work really poorly, right? Where people are using it just as a kind of a quick fix. They get stuck on it. And actually, because one of the ways it works, obviously suppressing appetite, they're not having the fiber. Their one little meal a day is ultra processed, and actually it has a real negative impact on the gut microbiome.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those cases, it's very mixed. So I think we just need to be careful though, when people are on these medications, what their diet. So even if they're losing weight, they might be like, yeah, this is amazing. You can still be malnourished and lose, and look like you are well nourished, right?
I mean, it's amazing, because like a year ago, I'd not seen it. I'd just literally not seen it at all. And now I have a significant number of patients that come to me having started on it. And the ones that do well are those that understand how it works, and they've tried everything. They've got amazing lifestyles. They want to fit into their clothes, which is totally understandable. And they're healthy weights. They're not using it to be thin. They're just using it to be what they want to be. But those that feel well are the ones that make sure that they have all the protein. They eat all the plants and fruit and vegetables, and they carry on with their lifestyles and their exercise, and they just use it to get rid of that fat that they just otherwise couldn't get rid of. But the ones that use it as a quick fix just never seem to do as well.